Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week Colin and I are delighted to be joined by Celtic legend Jackie McNamara. Jackie, how are you keeping?
Good, thanks, yeah.
It's great to see you.
You too.
Well, I mean, we have been talking a lot in the last few weeks, Jackie, about, you played with some great sides, but one team that will be celebrating your 25th anniversary, which is frightening, is the 1998 title-winning side under Wim Jansen. You won the double, of course. You're looking forward to the big night on the 12th of May at the Armadillo?
Yeah, it'll be good to catch up with the lads. Obviously, you will go our separate ways when you finish playing, and if they're still involved in football in some way. But it'll be good to see them all. The last time we kind of seen most of them was at the charity matches and different things. But no, it's you spend that special time with them, and obviously you miss each other and you go about your daily life as we all do, and it'll be good to catch up with them all.
No, absolutely. It is an event that we have a couple of tickets for. If you want to be in the prize draw, all you have to do is subscribe to our channel. We're about 6 or 7 subscribers away from 20,700. So get subscribing to the channel and you will be in to win the pair of tickets for the Armadillo. It's going to be a cracking night. Jackie, we're going to be talking about that season, and we'll bring it right up to date with some chat about this season as well and what you think Celtic can achieve under Ange Postecoglou. But I wanted to start off with Wim Jansen. He's a manager that I'm very fond of. I think most Celtic fans are. He was only here for a year, of course, but he sadly passed away last year. What was your first impressions, Jackie, when Wim Jansen walked across that training park?
Yeah, it was obviously strange. Murdo was taking the training at the time, and he just kind of appeared. We didn't know much about him. Just seen the tracksuit and the perm, and some boys thought he was a Scouser coming to the training. But I think initially when he first came in and we had our training camp over there in Holland, it was very much to the whistle. Everything was to the whistle, to the time, discipline, even down to everybody eating, in lunches and dinners. You had to be there and start at the same time, finish at the same time. Didn't want anybody being late. So discipline right from the start, although he wasn't a massive shouter or screamer. He was very calm, but he was very, disciplined in how he went about it.
Mm-hmm. Who else was linked with the job? Can you remember who was being talked about for the Celtic job back then?
I mean, there was loads. I think Houllier was one that was mentioned back then. A few managers from down south, and I think over the years at Celtic, it's always been the case. I remember when Wim had left as well. A year later, when Dr. Joe came in, there was all sorts of rumours with Ruud Gullit and different things were coming in. But I remember Houllier was I think he was the main one that was mentioned at the time and ended up taking the Liverpool job.
It's incredible, Jackie. You were saying we didn't know much about him. It's changed days, hasn't it? I mean, you've got everything at your fingertips now. You can find everybody's profile, CV, everything they've done. But he was written off by the Scottish press pretty quickly, wasn't he, Wim Jansen?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of tend to do that. You see it last year with Ange. People write them off because they didn't have his pro licence, UEFA pro licence. He had a different equivalent over in Australia. And people are quick to jump on that and put them down. But just the same way players come in until they go in and prove themselves. I suppose it gives them that extra bit of satisfaction when they do turn it around. But Wim was definitely one that was under the radar at that time.
Colin's a wee bit younger than me, Jackie, and he has been kind of spoiled in his Celtic supporting life. But could you maybe explain to people, maybe Colin's era, what it was like for Celtic at that time? I mean, obviously we'd gone a decade, but winning the league now, I'm not going to say it's expected, but if you've got any kind of goals for a season as a Celtic fan, winning the league is up there every single campaign. But it was, it wasn't a given back then. It was so difficult for Wim to come in under those circumstances, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers were dominant. I came in October '95, and they were strong, very, very strong at the time. We all know that obviously the fallout from that and what they spent and the players and everything else. But as players, you just focus on your teammates and focus on winning. You don't get involved with the off the field stuff. The Gascoignes, the Wildrops, McCoys, go right through the Rangers team. They're all international players, all paid a lot of money for them. And they were strong. As I said, I came in October and I played them 3 times and I wasn't on the losing side. They just lost the game before I came in. I think the start of September. But you knew the games you had to win them. You had to, the importance of it, because they were so strong. And for us to go and win the league, it was going to be a massive thing for us back then. It was bringing the teams together. Tommy had a fantastic team. We just couldn't get there. We were very, very close. And then Vim came in and brought in some great quality. Paul Lambert, Craig Burley at the time, and obviously the main one would be Henrik. People not knowing a lot about Henrik at the time either, but how he started, how he came through his whole career, how it sort of set off at Celtic for him as well, how he got better and better. So, and Vim identified how he wanted to play, and what was going to take to win the league, and fortunately we did.
Yeah,
actually, one of the things we were speaking to Paul and Simon about last week was the fact that a lot of Celtic fans from that era will say that Tommy Byrne's team was the best aesthetically. Like you saw them going forward, it was a joy to watch. But obviously, Tommy's side didn't have the success of Wim's side in winning the league. Simon and Paul put it down to the defence having changed. Do you think that was the case, and that was the difference between the two teams? Was that Wim's team was more solid at the back than Tommy's side?
It was a different structure. I mean, obviously under Tommy, I was a attacking fullback. I'd get forward and Tosh on the other side. In the first couple of games we'd lost with him, and he didn't want our fullbacks getting forward. He wanted them to stay. So it took, I kind of found myself out the starting 11 after that, Johnston away. And I got back in further up the field. It's the only time in my career I played right midfield, and never played it again apart from that season under Vim. He's seen me as a different kind of position. With Tommy, we were all out attack, yeah. But I mean, Tommy's team were exciting. It's probably the most enjoyable I've had as a player. I'm sure the fans would probably say the same. Watch the teams. Again, the league structure was different as well. It was 2 points for a win at that time as well. That was just the change to 3. So it's hard to say, but I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed both. I would say Vim probably was a bit more defensive minded than Tommy was, but Tommy grew up playing and doing it the Celtic way, which was a bit like what we're seeing just now. What people want to see, entertaining football and try to do it by winning at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. See, when I look at your managerial career, Jackie, and I've spoken to you about that before. Obviously, your time spent at Partick Thistle, Dundee United, and York City as well. What did you take from your time under Wim Jansen, did you think, as a manager? What was the things you learned from Wim that you maybe implemented yourself?
I think the biggest thing with Wim was his calmness. I tried to remain calm. It's very easy to lose your head as a manager and take things personal, or react after the games. In certain situations where maybe our players made a mistake or maybe something's happened, and Wim would never make it personal at that point. He would always wait to the Monday. He would have you going home thinking about your own performance as a player rather than maybe the goalkeeper's dropped one in, rather than everybody pointing the finger at the goalkeeper and blaming the goalie. He wanted everybody to be thinking about their own performance, and I think as a manager you take little bits from everyone, even the good and what you feel is bad. So am I going a wee bit there? Sorry. So I think definitely took quite a bit from him.
Yeah, for sure. When, as a Celtic fan going into that season, A bit like yourself, Jackie, obviously looking at Wim Jansen, we now know that he had a phenomenal career, particularly as a player. But I was worried as a fan because we were losing the entertainers that Tommy had brought in. We'd lost the Three Amigos, for example, but we also lost a lot of experience in Paul McStay and Peter Grant. So could you maybe just talk about how vital the recruitment was? Because, we couldn't, have 2 or 3 signings that had to bed in. It was almost as if they had to come in, hit the ground running and all knit together. I mean, how quality was that recruitment from Wim?
Yeah, I think he knew what he needed. He knew, obviously, Henrik very closely. He knew Henrik would come in and produce what he did. Other players he brought in, I thought Mark Reaper. Was it, can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, you just disappeared for a wee second there. You were just saying about Mark Reaper there, Jackie.
Yeah, I think Mark Reaper, ones like that coming in as well. Real solid centre half, alongside Tom Boyd at that point. Craig Burley, the goals that he got for midfield that season. So there was so many bits to the jigsaw, if you like, that he brought in that he knew how to make the team gel. He knew how he wanted to play and be solid and a real team unit. Yeah,
for sure. Someone is suggesting that we should speak to Johnny Gould. Was he a bit of an unsung hero, do you think, Jackie, in that side?
Gouldy actually a terrific guy. That season he had some unbelievable saves for us. And done fantastic. Great character as well. And that was it was just a strange season all round. How he came in. I think he thought he was going to Farsley Celtic. He ended up coming to us. He was down at Halifax.
That's right. I remember he spoke about he was at training, Jackie, with his mobile phone in his sock, just in case Celtic would phone back. He was actually training with his mobile phone on him, so he wouldn't miss the call. Yeah. It worked out okay though. For sure. Yeah. Now, Colin, somebody's asking for a sing-song, Colin. I can't really hold a tune, but I don't know if you want to give us a wee rendition of that, mate.
Not the day. But Jackie, it's one of those things, isn't it? You've got that connection with Scottish football. Obviously, your dad being a player, then you go on, and then you make that move from Dunfermline to Celtic. It's not something that a lot of players do nowadays, is get that sort of big move. It used to be the common thing. You take a look at the signings that Celtic make about that time, and yourself and other players from the Scottish League. Do you think that the standard of the development of players has changed from when you were playing to now? Because you take a look at, obviously, Andrew's recruitment tactics. He's went out, he's looked at the Asian market, he's looked at Europe, he's looked abroad. There's not really a lot of Scottish talent coming through these days. What do you think the difference is now from when you were playing to the sort of the period we're at just now?
To be honest, I do think there's a great deal of talent there. I just think the problem is with our game just now and the way it's went is the fear of putting them in. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing. I do believe we've got some incredible talent. We're losing a lot of kids because they're scared to play them. They're scared to put them in there. It's one thing that I always wanted to do as a manager when I took over my first job at Partick Thistle. Was you don't have a big budget, but you're giving young players a chance. Dundee United likewise, and you can see them all, how they've all kind of went on because they're playing games, they're getting an opportunity. When I came through at Dunfermline, we used to play the reserve game at the same time as the first team. So if I wasn't in the first team at 17, 18, I was playing, if Celtic were playing Dunfermline's first team at East End Park, we'd be at Celtic Park playing at the same time against experienced players. But you don't have that. We've not had that for a long, long time. So kids now are having to drop further and further down. If they do get games, if they are playing games, it's meaningless. You can see it. You can see it in the Premier League. You can see the standard from third down. There's not many kids getting an opportunity. And it's the same group of players for the last sort of 7, 8, 9 years that are in there. The same recruitment, the same players just going from club to club. Mm-hmm. When these young players should be getting opportunities and getting a chance to grow.
The thing is, though, Jackie, when you look at your record, particularly at Dundee United, and what those guys have gone on to achieve, you kind of proved that it is doable. I mean, was Harry Shooter one of the younger boys at Tannadice when you were there? Was he there when you were at Tannadice?
Harry was 15. Yeah, I had him in training. Harry was 15 at the time, just ready to start. Coming into it. So he was obviously one of the younger ones in that group coming through. But again, it's just getting them games. Same with John. I mean, I played his brother John at 16 against Celtic in the semi-final. I had more trust in John at 16 than I had in a 27-year-old to go and face Celtic at Hampden in the semi-final, because he's not experienced fear. He's not experienced the fear in the game to worry about the result or worry about making mistakes or anything else. I think the balance is when they get to that point, sometimes the kids need, when you've played 6 or 7 games, they start thinking about it, and you take them out for a little bit and then you bring them back in. And that's sort of what we tried to do.
Was there anyone that was sort of bubbling under the surface of sort of Wim's team, and then you obviously went on to Martin's team, Joe in between and Barnesy, but was there anybody that you thought was coming through that youth system that was really going to be the one that was going to make it, but we just didn't see that?
To be honest, no, not the ones that came through was the ones I thought. I thought Liam Miller would, when I seen Liam. Obviously, Colin Healy was younger. One I would probably say would be John Paul McBride. Was a really good young player. The wee lad Mark Anthony as well didn't quite hit the heights. The rest of them, obviously John Kennedy had got a chance around the first team, then he got a bad injury. Sean Maloney, Aidan, I would say McGeady was probably the most skillful at that time. The young ones coming through to train with us. Another one would be Mark Fotheringham. Mark, again, didn't quite get to the heights that you maybe would have thought.
One thing Simon says to us was that, certain players come in, Jackie, and it kind of changes the dynamic, and it changes the way that people maybe think and train and approach the preparation for games. He used Van Hooijdonk as an example, an earlier example of that. What did Henrik Larsson bring, do you think, to that dressing room and to the training pitch that kind of raised the players around about him?
I think he brought in. I mean, he was quiet. He was very, very quiet. I mean, right at the start, there was a well documented incident with Tosh that he put the head in Henrik the day before the Rangers game. I think it was just at that time there was a kind of awkwardness between some that weren't playing, some weren't. That were in the starting 11. And Vim, I always felt Vim was always testing the players. So he would, on a Friday, he would do 2 teams. He would set up in a certain way that you would think that was a starting 11 on the Saturday. Maybe one position would not be the same. And some of the players, you could feel it sort of boiling over, at certain bits there, and the frustration, obviously, with Tosh and not playing in that team. Build over that training session, and I put the head in Henrik, which was not the best thing to do. But Henrik's standards, as I said, when he first came in, obviously I was there for his full 7 years that he was there, and seen him go. When he left, he just got better and better and better. If you're training every day. To his finishing all-round game, he was just a top international player.
You brought back the memory of that, Colin. You won't remember, but I mean, you imagine it nowadays with the press coverage, it would have been on that ticker tape for 24 hours on Sky Sports. And there was a couple of wee moments that season, though, Jackie, that you kind of thought there's a bit of adversity there. We lost 3 games kind of early, one of them in Europe. Tosh sticks ahead, and Henrik. We also had, obviously, Darren Jackson's condition as well. But it seemed to galvanise you as a team. It worked the other way about. It seemed to galvanise you. Do you think that's safe to say that?
100%. I did. I think it brought us together. I think on the back of that, we used to we went out, we'd go-karting and go for a few drinks, we'd go for meals, maybe a golf. We would socialise and kind of try and bring the group together. And we did a lot of socialising that year, which I think helped us, to deal with not just the pressure, but the expectation of that year. Just kept us all as one. What seemed to go on really well from that. Tommy Johnson as well had a bad injury that season, which was a massive blow. But Tommy was still probably a massive part of it. He was the one organising the social.
One of the things that a lot of people can attribute to the success of that was the transfers that came in that season, as Paul's touched on. One of them being Paul Lambert coming in the November time. What was that like, adding to the dressing room an experienced Champions League winner at that point?
Yeah, Lambert was a great signing. I think just to complement Craig in the middle of the park there and give Craig that kind of freedom to, go beyond the forwards to get the goals. But Paul, he was on top of his game. He just won the Champions League. I think he could have probably, if he wanted to, went to a number of clubs at that time. His stock was being so high. For us, it was a massive one to get him at that time, and it was a fantastic thing. I think, looking at it from my side, when I came into the club, you had Paul McStay in there, who was an unbelievable player. He could dictate the game. He could do things. When Paul obviously finished, it was kind of a hole there, and I think Paul Lambert coming into that really helped. Change the midfield that we had and give us that extra wee bit. And I thought he was excellent.
Can you imagine that nowadays, Paul? A Champions League winner coming straight into that Celtic team. You'd be paying obscene amounts of money.
The example would be a Scottish Champions League winner would be Andy Robertson. So that's an example you could use. How much would that cost? That would just be beyond what we could achieve.
Probably more than what our annual turnover is every year.
I know. Jackie, last year it was interesting watching how there were parallels between Wim Janssen's season and Angie's first season. The both managers had previously managed in Japan. They were both written off. They both had a real job at rebuilding the side. And then there was the moment of the League Cup finals, I believed, that were huge game-changing moments of the season. Do you think that's safe to say that in your season under Wim Jansen, the League Cup final against Dundee United was massive, even in terms of the belief of that dressing room? Yeah,
it helped. I think that was my first trophy I'd won as a Celtic player. And just having that feeling and getting a medal and the relief with the fans that night, the comfortable win over Dundee United. I think that every little bit of that season, I think even just before that with the European game, we toe-to-toe with Liverpool, we should have knocked Liverpool out the UEFA Cup. That gave us a lift, and then the next bit was obviously the League Cup, winning that. That gave us another massive lift, and right, let's go and focus on the league now. Let's get because we were chasing at the points as well. So that it definitely helped. It takes the pressure off everybody, the fans and that as well, and we're capable of winning something, and obviously it helped us kick on from there.
Paul was saying last week that he actually went to Wim before the League Cup final and asked him not to play him because he wasn't in the best of form at the time. Were you aware of that? And was that something that just Wim was so open that he could have that conversation with you? He could say, "Look, you're not playing well. I'm going to rest you for this game." Things like that. It seems as if he was very approachable.
He was. I mean, Paul was close with every manager, though. He did a relationship. Not all of us could have that relationship that Paul had with all the managers. But from my own experience with him, I mean, I actually get picked to go away with Scotland in France, and I was left out. Shock! I was left out in the stand again, and had a few drinks that night. I was so angry because I didn't want to. My wife was pregnant at the time, and I was away from home, and which you don't mind doing if you're involved. But I went all the way there for a friendly, St Etienne, and ended up having a few drinks, and ended up coming back on the plane and we stayed at the hotel next to the airport before then coming into training in the morning. And I'd stayed up with, I think it was Billy Dodds was at Aberdeen at the time, and I ended up staying up having a few more drinks at the bar, which meant I couldn't drive to training. So Darren Jackson had to drive my car with me in it, who wasn't meant to be driving at the time because of his brain operation. And I got to the stadium and Vim could see that I wasn't quite right, to say the least. And he kind of pulled me. He's like, "Look, I think he knew I was angry that I didn't feature for the Scotland. He knew the reason why, with my wife and stuff. And he said, look, just you come back tomorrow, everything." I'm like, no, I'm fine, Gaffer. I'll go and do the warm up. I'll go and train. He went, no. He says, you come back tomorrow. Make sure you're okay with a big game Saturday. And I think I went round to do a couple of laps at the pitch, but it wasn't a good idea. And then went back in. I went home. I got home that night. Came back in next morning. I was like, God, just he could have fined me. He could have done something there. But he knew the situation, and he knew. And next morning, he came back in. He came up to me in the morning before we started training. And he looked at me in the eye. He was like, "Are you okay this morning? Are you good?" And I was like, "Yes, Gaffer, I feel better this morning." And then just got on with it. He was just his man management from that. In that situation, where some managers that I've maybe had before would just be like, "You're fined." But it was good that way.
I remember a story, actually. It was Tommy Johnson told us a story, Jackie. Remember back in the Walkabout gig in Glasgow, and he was talking about how John Barnes didn't have that trust in his players, even the experienced players. I think at one point you guys had gone, it might have been Portugal, you'd gone away for the winter break, and he didn't trust that you were actually drinking soft drinks, and he came up and he picked one of the glasses up and drank it to make sure it didn't have...
That was actually, to be honest, it was actually pre-season. That was in pre-season in Norway, aye. But we went to Portugal the winter break as well. And that was when we first obviously started working with him. We were sitting there, Tommy, Craig and Stubbsy, we were in Norway. We went along to the wee coffee shop and Tommy's sitting me. It was Tommy Johnson sitting me a cup of Coca-Cola, and John the manager taking a drink out of it to see if it was alcohol, which it wasn't. But he kind of lost him straight away for pre-season.
How did you approach it? Because obviously in the modern game, Jackie, you've got sports scientists, you've got conditioning, diet, all that kind of thing, which is so important. But you've got the other side of that, whereby you've got a team spirit and morale, and sometimes, in your day going out and having that kind of social aspect. How did you approach it as a manager? Did you let them get a bit of freedom at the right times? Yeah,
I think you've got to. I think if you put obstacles in the way, you treat them like adults and treat them, I think that's where, certain managers were very, very good. You remember that? Martin O'Neill was fantastic for that. Treating you like an adult and giving you that responsibility, as long as you don't cross the line. And there's always a line. Even when I was manager at Dundee United, we went to Spain for pre-season, and St Mirren were there as well. And bear in mind, my Dundee United team were all young. I mean, we had a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, and Suter and Gold. Andy Robertson you're all young. We had some experienced players as well. And I'd said to the players, like, on you go. You can go to Marbella. You can go where, I'm giving you the day off because you worked hard last week. I'm trusting you. Make sure nobody gets arrested. I don't want anything coming back to the club. Go and enjoy yourselves without, putting a curfew on time. I said, I want everybody back here tomorrow afternoon for a meeting before we train. And St Mirren boys were there as well. The experienced boys, Stephen Tom, all them were sitting there, and our players were having a drink in front of me. Then they all went together into Marbella, and they all came back together. They all looked after each other. There was not one bit of problem. The St Mirren boys got the biggest carry-out you've ever seen, because they had a curfew. I think Danny Lennon put a curfew on them, and you could see them all like wee boys trying to rebel, and some of them sneaked out and went out anyway, and you kind of lose them. Whereas they put the trust in them. All our players were the next day were were fine. There was no issues. He had some issues to deal with as a manager.
Yeah, for sure. What was it at Dunfermline? Where did you all used to go at Dunfermline, Jackie? There was a tradition, wasn't there?
Magaluf.
Mhm.
Magaluf. That was. I mean, I only went once, and that was just before I got married. And I think, I mean, I was 21 at the time, and Dick Campbell was talking about it recently, actually, because Bert, the manager, was worried about me with the drinking. He says, "What's wee Jackie? He's nobody used to this." Because he used to have everybody had to be in the beach for like 12 o'clock, and Big Norrie, the captain, God rest him, would get a massive carry out, and we all had to be there. I lasted 3 days, and that was, I went up to Bert and Dick and asked them for money so I could go to the go-karts. He was laughing. They're worried about me drinking. I'm asking me and Big Andy Todd went away go-karting in the afternoon because I couldn't drink anymore.
Couldn't keep up with him. I mean, what kind of experienced guys would have been there? Norrie McCarthy, would you have had Ian Westwater, guys like that? Kenny Ward?
Paul Smith, guys like that. Good senior players. Neil Cooper, Big Tatty. The guys that could throw the drink back and keep going for the week. But for me, 3 days was my limit.
3 days and I'm out. I think I'm probably the same at 44, to be honest with you, Jackie. There's loads of comments coming in. Lloyd Jepson, what a player Jackie was. Nice to see him looking so well. And IH Decorating remembers fondly drinking in your old man's boozer. That wasn't that far away from here. We're in Dalkeith. Where was your old man? Was it Musselburgh?
Musselburgh, aye. The couple of pubs in Musselburgh, aye. Good pub.
Yeah. And Robert Hyland's old enough to have seen both yourself and your dad playing. We were talking last week about unsung heroes, and I do remember Murdo McLeod obviously was there. He must have been really important for Wim Jansen coming to Scotland to work for the first time. Murdo knew the culture of the game. Who do you look back on Murdo's part in that double winning season, Jackie?
Yeah, I think it was a good group. I think it was good for Wim Murdo. He knew what was going on behind the scenes. He knew, obviously, it would for the players' side as well was good. John Clark came in as a kit man that year, and all. Clarkie was fantastic. Proper legend, great guy. At that time as well, coming into it. Brian Scott, the physio. Mm-hmm. I think the backroom staff, they all played a massive role. With the players and the togetherness as well. And Murdo was a massive part of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads and loads of comments coming through. If you've got any questions for Jackie McNamara that Colin and I don't have the time to ask, then fire away, because we will be here as usual to 1:30. We're talking about the famous season where did Celtic stop the 10, Jackie, or did Celtic win the 1? This is a debate that's been running on Twitter. I always call it stopping the 10. Is that the way you were looking at it?
That's the way we looked at it, I think, because that's what it was. The importance of that season, I think, as a player, that's obviously we won it. I mean, with the T-shirts up and different things, and throughout the season, I mean, Hearts were strong that season as well. In fairness, they were up there for the majority, right up to near the end. They had a good side, Hearts, at that point, which there's 3 teams in the mix, which doesn't normally happen. It was a crazy season, when you look at all the games and how it kind of went back and forth, and but there was a lot of pressure as well.
See, when you talk about the Hearts, sorry, Colin, there's a lot of talk this season about a team in Scotland trying to become the third force, trying to, split Celtic and Rangers. And Hearts seem to be quite ambitious in that respect, Jackie. Do you think it's beyond another Scottish team to do that?
I think to maintain it, obviously Hearts are pushing as well as they can. I think they've done well. I think the difficulty is, when you play for Celtic, you've got both. You've got the European to play as well. You've got the demands for that. You've got the, you need the squad. You need to be bits of luck with injuries and different things. When you've not got the squad, you can see things kind of falter away. Hearts have obviously invested a lot this season. They've brought in Even with the goalkeeper situation, you've got Xander Clark now is number one, with Craig Gordon out. There's not many teams can have that kind of backup that they've got. Boyce has been out with a bad injury. That they went in, brought Shankland in, has done well. They keep adding. So yeah, it's whether or not they can get close enough to really challenge, which is the big one. But Celtic at this point seem to be getting stronger and stronger. It's obviously Rangers this season have changed the manager, and his results have been good, but he's not making any headway because he's not getting the chance to. They're maybe not playing well but they're getting results. But there's no change at the top, and Andrew's not giving any. When you're in front at that point, that's what you want. You just keep winning. Doesn't matter what happens elsewhere, and that's, I'm sure, what Andrew was saying to all the players. I'm not really interested in anybody else. We just keep winning, and we won't be caught.
That's one of the things when you look back on the 97-98 season. Obviously, with a poor start, you kind of give the advantage to Rangers right away. They're going for the 10th title. We're trying to stop the 10. At what point was it really kind of amongst the guys that they thought, do you know what, this is the season? Because for the sort of 9 years before, I'm sure there was points where you thought, right, do you know what, we can do this, especially under Tommy as well when you're playing such great football. But at what point do you really think it kind of sunk in that it was thought, right, that's it, this is the season, this is going to be the year that we stop them?
I think it was the January game, the 2-0, with Craig Burley and Lambo scored. That was because if you actually watched that game recently, and the saves that Gorham had was just, like the other games under Tommy. We had even some of done a couple of dodgy offside decisions were never offside, but Gorham had still, Gorham had still had some unbelievable saves with Harold in that game, one or two others, and then Craig gets the goal. But we played really well that day, and we should have won by a lot more. And Craig gets a goal, then in the last minutes, Lambo scores a screamer, and that's the 2-0 game. And through the history, the team that wins that game, it goes on to win the league, and little things like that. You just, we knew that was a turning point we had to do, was to beat Rangers, because we've played well against them, but not got the rewards, or certain things went against us. But that game was, for me, was the bit at the front, right, we can do this now, let's go. That's
the thing as well, Colin. You've got to understand how phenomenal a goalkeeper Andy Gorham was. I mean, Tommy Burns used to talk about it, and it was unreal. Some of the really, close games that one spectacular save aside, we might have been on the end of a draw or a win rather than a defeat. And there's two players you mentioned there, Jackie, that I think deserve quite a bit of praise this season for different reasons. People seem to, I don't know if they underestimate the value of Craig Burley that season. The goals from midfield were sensational. He was a brilliant signing for Celtic. He was,
and his timing of the runs, just that late run into the box, and his finishing was excellent. He scored a lot of valuable goals for us. It was a big reason we won the league. That game especially, there was the game before that we got a late draw against them at Celtic Park with Big Stubbsy, scored with a late header. Again, that was a match that we had chance after chance, and they'd scored a goal. You think deja vu, then Stubbsy comes up with a crucial header right in the death to get us a point. But that for me, that was definitely the turning point with Craig and Paul's goal.
Yeah. Then you've got Harold Bratback, who came in kind of later in the campaign because there was no transfer windows back then. And he was a guy that it seemed as though he kind of struggled to settle, but he became a cult hero, Jackie, because of for obvious reasons. What do you think it's about a team like Celtic who can buy a player like Bratback, who was scoring Champions League goals against the likes of Real Madrid when we signed them, but they just failed to settle? Is it just the club, Celtic, the demands, the standards? Does it sometimes just not suit a player?
I think it's everything. I think, I was looking at in the comments for Giacomakis recently about teams sitting in, and if you looked at Harold's game, Harold's 40 was the facing the opposition, not always back to goal. And most of the teams that come and play against us would be behind the ball. And as a striker at Celtic, you need to be good with your back to goal, as our top strikers have been. And you see it with certain games there that when teams are sitting in, so you need to try and find space for them to get in behind. Harold was better when he's facing the opposition goal, and you can see the goals that he scored for us. There's not many goals that he's got that are, ways back to goal and turning them or winning headers in the box. A bit like Kyogo is always on the move, always facing opposition goal when he's doing that. So it's a different type of striker. Giakoumakis is more physical, wants to compete back to goal. John Hartson, Sutty, guys like that. Big Pierre could do both, but mostly back to goal. So I think when you're looking at strikers come in, they're all different types. And Harold, for me, that was the biggest thing at that time with Harold. He was at his best when he was moving and running down and catching teams in the break, and there was space to get into.
Colin, with regards to the actual games against Rangers, very tight that season. We won one game. They beat us 3 times, including once in the cup, and of course there was a 1-1 draw. But when you look at the way that you prepared for those games under Tommy Burns compared to the games under Wim Jansen against Rangers, what was the difference, Jackie? Or was it more of the kind of same? What was the difference in preparation?
No, it was more or less the same, to be honest. We went with Tommy, we'd go to Seymour the day before the game. I think the last ones with him, it was back at Cameron House. We were at Cameron House before we go the day before. So, I mean, the approach, everything else was similar. I think maybe the day before the game, with Tommy, I remember some of the games we would do the young v old. When the little, if you ever seen the bit at front of Seymour, how we actually played a game there, young v old, there was like a path in the middle. And you'd be like, health and safety. The players would probably refuse to play in it. And I remember, I think it was one of my first games, and it was so competitive. Like one of the players had 3 stitches for one of the tackles. I think it was Boydie, got 3 stitches for Paul McStay. Just caught him in the bit, and the day before a game, just like it's just no change. That was how we were. You trained how you play. And every day with standards with Tommy, it was up there, and tackles were flying. It was, you would never have thought we had an old firm the next day.
It's incredible.
Was that a bit dangerous, Jackie, with the amount of it wasn't? You know what I mean? It wasn't a big squad, so I mean,
I know
one
that's what I'm saying. The
injury
next day,
kinda...
Boydie got stitched up and played with stitches next day. But in the Rangers game, it's
insane.
At the time it's just the norm. You know what I mean? It's like, but now it's like, right, we're not doing anything. We'll just do some warm up and wee strides. We'll maybe walk through something else. As a manager, I was like that myself. Panic the day before anybody gets injured. No, anybody getting any silly tackles in.
See, maybe in your dad's time at Celtic, I heard about the young v old, and if you lost the game, you ended up in the water. You had to go in the water. Was that still the case under Tommy? Sorry, Jackie, you've frozen a wee bit there. Hopefully you'll come back.
There was wee bits of wee forfeits, but you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly well. It's just a shame, obviously. I'm a traditionalist about Seamill Hydro, but when you actually hear what it was like, you're kind of glad Celtic didn't go there anymore. Now, the other thing I was going to say, Jackie, is...
very true. It was, I don't think we're too happy doing it nowadays.
Oh, definitely not. Simon Donnelly always talks about the game at East End Park because he scores the goal that could have stopped the 10. It would have been one of the most memorable goals in Celtic's history. Obviously, it wasn't to be. What about yourself going back to East End? Was there something a wee bit special, about thinking about winning the league there? It would have been pretty special for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was in my thoughts. Like, I thought I was going to win my first league title there as a player, especially, having started at 16 at Dunfermline, and it's where I kind of learnt my trade, if you like. I used to sweep all the terracings and pick all the stuff and paint the terracings, and all the work that I'd done over there as a kid. I thought this is going to be a good moment, winning my first league title back there, and it was all going to plan, to be fair, until the lad scored, which he shouldn't have scored with. We should have the game wrapped up. The boy Falconbridge scored a big loopy header into Goldie. But it was pretty distraught after it. But we soon regrouped and tried to focus on the following weekend.
Obviously, Jackie, you then went on to play under likes of Dr. Joe, as we say, Barnsley, but you've got to say the most successful time in your career was obviously under Martin O'Neill. When you look back at the Wim Jansen team, how does that compare to the teams of Martin O'Neill's? And do you think there was many players from that era that would have suited into the style of Martin's football?
I think. You go through the team there, because although Martin brought a lot of players in, he also brought a lot of players sort of through that were maybe there. Like, say, big Johan was, Martin converted him back into a centre back. Johan Mjällby came as a midfielder. Bobby Pett, obviously, Martin, it totally changed his career. Stilian Petrov, he made Stilian a box to box midfielder, and totally changed Stilian's career. Myself, found a different position under Martin, in and out the team, from wing back to centre back, to full back at the end. But I think obviously Martin was the most successful in my 10 years at that time with the team. The players that he brought in, but he had a really good eye for players, their characters, and winners, to be honest. And I think Vim likewise did the same. I think players wise, who would be in it? Big Reaper, I think Big Reaps was very unlucky with, he had arthritis in his big toe. We used to take the piss with him because he couldn't come. Didn't get a lot of sympathy, just like chop it off, big man. You know what I mean? The big guy, 6'5", with his big toe, it's like, just chop it off and go again. But no, he was a big quality guy, big V-Corst as well, who'd obviously health issues. I think Martin would have improved them all as well.
You're talking about positions, Jackie. What do you make of the inverted fullbacks? Obviously, Greg Taylor has taken to it like a duck to water. I remember when Ange came in, it was a topic of loads of conversations, but it's really worked for Celtic. What do you make of it? Would you have enjoyed it yourself?
Yeah, I do. I think it's like anything. The football goes through different phases and different shapes and systems. It's 4-4-2, it's 3-5-2, and how the teams want to play the fullbacks. For me, I personally would have liked it because I can play midfield. I can obviously see things and get forward. In most of the teams that they're playing week in, week out, they're all defensive. They're not coming to attack the fullbacks anyway. They're just trying to catch them on the break. So one ball over the top into the channels. The biggest test is obviously the European ones, the Champions League, when you get to that level, and I'm sure that's what Ange will want to change. For next season, you want to keep building and get stronger in Europe. Domestically, we're miles ahead just now.
How far do you think he can take it, Jackie? Yeah, obviously there's things in the game that will hold Celtic back, but how far do you think Celtic can go in European football?
I don't know. Obviously, the gulf is there financially, but I think the gulf was there before. We used to talk about going down to beat teams in England, going down to beat Liverpools and Blackburns and all the teams who played, Leeds, whoever we were playing. And there was still a big gulf there, but I think if your team's good enough, it shouldn't really matter. In terms of buying somebody at 50 million, if you can get somebody at 2 million that you can develop and turn into a top player that's worth 50 million, and using them before they do go to that next stage. You look at the players that's came through the club, 75 million for Van Dijk, Van Dijk wasn't 75 million when he came to Celtic. It's because he's went down there. He's playing in the league down here, and then obviously the value goes up and everything else. So it's been good in the markets and getting the right players, and then obviously you can see that Ange is developing the players that he's working with, and he's making them better. You know, Greg obviously has won. Ralston last year was another a big one. You know, I think most people thought that Ralston wouldn't have featured at all, and he ended up being a fantastic season. You know, I think he's been a bit unfortunate this year with injuries, but other players that he's worked with, you can see that a manager's stamp on it, that he's making them better.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you speak about sort of developing players and getting players in it, that stuff like that. Hypothetical question here. In today's current transfer market, Jackie, how much is Henrik worth?
Oh, God. It's scary to think about, mate, to be honest. You know, you look at guys going for 100 million there. It's well over that. It's got to be well over that.
You're definitely the best player you've ever played with or against.
Yeah. I mean, played some special players against the Ronaldinhos and different types, but Henrik was, you know, we obviously know because we trained with him and played with him. You know, even when I was in Scotland team, you know, Darren Fletcher talking about him, and this was after he went to Barcelona and went back to Man United. I think he was 35, 36 at the time, yeah. and he had Ronaldo and Rooney at that time. He said, "What about Larsson?" He went, "How good is he?" And I went, "I know." I said, "Just because he's been playing in Scotland, but his movement," he said, "his movement is scary." I said that because as a fullback, you knew that. You know, you knew that when they could make something. He actually showing you where he's moving to put the ball in and make a bad ball a good one. Mm-hmm. And his timing, he wasn't massive. Henrik was 5'9", 5'10", but the amount of headers he scores, even the ones in Seville, he jumps early, his timing, gets across defenders, stuff that is very, very difficult to teach and coach. It just becomes a natural. He became a natural top class, you know, international finisher.
One of the things, Paul, when we spoke to some of the players from that era, is they're talking about Martin O'Neill and how he would treat the players. Maybe if it was a poor game, everybody would get slaughtered. But if it came to Henrik, you couldn't say anything. And no wonder he generally. I mean, we watch the footballers of nowadays. Obviously, people will say Ronaldo, Messi, greatest of all time, and stuff like that. The underappreciation, I think, is still out there for Henrik. Anybody out with the sort of British Isles, I don't think there's anybody in Europe that fully appreciates how good Henrik Larsson was. He could have went to any club in the world.
Yeah.
How was he in the social aspect, Jackie? Did he get involved with the boys going out for a
he
did.
He was brand new that way as well. Again, I think slow to start. You know, getting to know you and getting to know different people. But once he's in the and he's comfortable, he's great company. Obviously, he was. I mean, you think about it, everybody went to Henrik. All the fans, it was Henrik. Everybody else just, just a god to the fans over the years. You know, and you're looking at it there, but how he dealt with it as well. It was, he dealt with it brilliantly.
How were the pool tournaments round about then? Because I know that get a bit feisty between him and Lambo at times. Is there anybody else stepping up to the plate?
No, there's a few. We used to play. It was like everything competitive. You know, even in golf games in the PlayStation when he first came in, we'd play with that and playing golf for him as well. When like a lot of the boys when they first come in and they start playing golf, they're not very good. I remember playing with Big Reeps and Morton, and they'd be like off 28 and stuff. And you're like, when you're up in the tee and they've got 4 irons out off the tee and they're hitting it right side to side, and this is going to be a long round. But within 12 months, same as Henrik, they're all like single figures, where I'm still crap. I mean, mine's is consistent, always in about 13 to 15 handicap. They're like 28, and the next year they're doing it 7. It's like, it's frustrating.
The one thing about this season, I loved the whole campaign, the ups and the downs, the smell of the glove thing. I loved all that, Jackie. But obviously, at the very end, Wim Jansen leaves. That was the big issue. Obviously, I mean, we spoke to Paul Lambert and Simon Donnelly last week about the shock in the camp. Can you remember it? Because I think, did Paul Lambert say it was in his bedroom, Colin, that he broke the news? What's your memories of that moment, and how, it kind of probably punched the air out of you a wee bit after such elation?
Yeah, it was a real blow, to be honest. I think just when you're starting to, get momentum and win the league, and right, let's go and build on this. And we were due to go away to the World Cup as well with Scotland. But it was the day after we won the league. We were out in Portugal for the George Cadet thing. We were playing Sport in Lisbon. And I was still in the team bus with Jacko. I didn't play. I was just still celebrating winning the league. So I was, for the last 6 months of that season, I'd been carrying a knee injury, and I couldn't. It took me like 5 days to get over a game. Mm-hmm. So there's no way I could have played in there. So I just stayed in the bus and drank the carry-out with Jacko, and then we went to the team hotel. And then Wim, after the game, had pulled us on to the bit of the hotel and told us that he'd made his decision. There was a lot of speculation in the press saying he was leaving, and different things had fallen out with the different people at the club. And then he said, "Look, I'm walking away. I'm resigning." After that, and which kind of took the mood really down before we came back, which back to square one again.
Mm. Must have felt like that. And it took a while, obviously, for us to get the success again. Jackie, you recently wrote your book, your life story, your autobiography. How was that for you, going through your career? A lot of people say it's cathartic to go, through their memories and get it all down in writing. And obviously, you toured it extensively as well. How did you enjoy that?
I loved it, to be honest. It's one thing I've been asked a number of times to do over the years, and I thought, while you're managing or still playing, everybody will say, and actually to do it I really enjoyed it. I enjoy looking back in it, and bits that you think, if I left somebody out here or anything else, but more importantly for my son had read it, and he's like, I didn't know that, so a lot of things there you kind of, your dad, it's like my dad, you want to know things that you're kind of growing up. So I didn't just become a football player. I had to, work harder. I had a bad leg break at 15 and worked my way up through Dunfermline. And worked my way at Celtic, different managers, even under Martin, having to prove yourself and go again. And that's practically been my whole career and life, is fighting, and trying to achieve and try to maximise it, for being too small or not good enough, So I think for me personally, it was good to put it down in paper, and enjoyed doing it.
And obviously, Jackie's favourite part of that tour was stopping off at the Greenock CSC with Jerry McDade. That was your highlight, Jackie. You don't need to tell everybody that. We know that personally.
Yeah.
But you obviously,
it was great. To be honest, I really enjoyed doing it. You're always sceptical, and you want to tell, obviously, the story and tell the truth about it. And obviously, people would ask a departure when I left with Martin, what happened there with Gordon and everything else. But you just put your side of the story, and that's all you can do.
So you spoke about the past there, Jackie, but what does the future hold? Obviously, there's a couple of positions opening up in Scotland. Would you be interested in getting back into management? Obviously, Motherwell, Aberdeen, Partick Thistle looking for a manager as well. Anything like that interest you?
No, to be honest, I think that ship sailed. I think I enjoy doing what I'm doing now, looking after young players and trying to manage them. I got into do it this side when some of the players I used to manage would ask me for advice, and what do you think I should do here, Gaffer, and try and help them that way. Which keeps me still involved in the game and doing little things. But to be honest, I miss playing football. If I could go back and play football again, 100%, that's the best days of your life. The management is frustrating. It's good. I enjoyed bits of it, and I had a spell at Thistle and a spell at United that I was like a wee boy again. I looked forward to a Saturday when I knew I had my team going well and playing well and doing things and exciting and playing attractive football. But then you get caught up in it's just become about survival. You know, you're dealing with the same press guys every day. You're dealing with people who want to take your job, want to think they can do your job. And I think with that you lose your kind of sight what you're trying to do. Whereas a coach for me is somebody that improves the players, improves there. You're a teacher. You're trying to pass on your experiences and your wisdom to try and help them be better, and hopefully they have the same career and experiences I had as a player. But that's all lost now. It seems to be, you know, how long they can survive. It's the same guys looking for jobs, and I didn't want to go into management to be a survivor. I wanted to go and make a difference.
We need to see Paul if them Legends games start back up again, because it sounds as if Jackie's looking for a shot.
I think they've gone enough.
I don't know, Jackie. I saw you at was it the Fives when you nutmegged Mike Alone? I saw you doing that not that long ago.
I enjoyed that.
That was great. That was brilliant. Listen, Jackie and the legends of the 1998 team are paying tribute to Wim Jansen. It's on the 12th of May at the Armadillo. There are tickets available. The link is underneath this video. If you subscribe to Celtic State of Mind, you'll be put into a draw for a couple of tickets. We gave a couple of VIPs away last week, but Brass Neck, who won them, has not yet claimed them. So be quick, Brass Neck, or we're going to have to put them out again. It's been tremendous catching up with you, Jackie. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on A Celtic State of Mind.